Welcome once again to the official MUFON podcast. I'm your host, Richard Beckwith. My guest tonight is Craig Campobasso, author of the new book, The Extraterrestrial Species Almanac, the ultimate field guide to the 82 extraterrestrial species that populate the universe, on MUFON Books. ET enthusiast Craig Campobasso explores the origins, physical characteristics, technological and consciousness abilities, dimensional capacities, belief systems, and cosmic agendas of each of the species. The species, according to Craig, fall into two categories. One, benevolent races who function as the guardians of humanity, whose goals include helping people to overcome duality, healing, and protecting. And two, malevolent races who are responsible for abductions, cloning, and ultimately domination. This intergalactic expose delves deeply into who the real extraterrestrials are and what they want with the people of Earth. Fully illustrated, it includes actual photographs of extraterrestrials. Craig has worked behind the scenes on such blockbuster film classics as Frank Herbert's Dune and two Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, Conan the Destroyer and Total Recall. He began his casting career on Steven Spielberg's Amazing Stories. He received an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Casting for a series on David E. Kelley's Picket Fences. Craig's casting career spans 3 decades now. Craig directed, wrote, and produced the short film Stranger at the Pentagon, which was adapted from the popular UFO book authored by the late Dr. Frank Strange. After production, the short film collected accolades. In September 2014, it won Best Sci-Fi Film at the Burbank International Film Festival, selling out all 275 seats, a first for the festival. In 2015, it won a Remmy Award for the World Fest Houston International Film Festival for Best Sci-Fi Short. Craig has appeared on many radio shows, including Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie twice. He has also been a guest on the Open Minds talk show with Regina Meredith and 2 episodes of Beyond Belief hosted by George Norrie on Gaia. Craig has also appeared on the History Channel's Ancient Aliens. I am very honored to have him here as my guest on the MUFON podcast. Craig Campobasso, welcome to the program.
Hey, how are you, Richard? It was really good to be here.
Oh, man, I really appreciate you being here. I really do.
I'm really happy.
yeah, I am too. It's started off to be a really good morning so far. We had a nice talk before we got on the air this morning.
Yes.
So let's talk about your book. That's why we're here, right?
Yes.
And we're talking about the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac this morning. But I don't know if I want to get right to that right now. Is that what you want to get right to? You want to get right to the book?
Whatever you want to talk about. Ask me.
Well, you have such an interesting background, and I don't necessarily want to spring the book on everybody right off the bat because it's your latest work, and you have a body of work that you have compiled over the years. You have one of the most interesting backgrounds of anyone I've ever met. A background in film, in casting. You were an actor when you were a child.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell us about that, because you knew a couple of people when you were younger.
Yeah, I was a youngin. I started at age 15. Nobody in my family was in the film business, so my mom had no idea what to do. She was talking to a bunch of her friends, and somebody said, well, a friend of mine's friend knows this agent and blah, blah, blah. So I met with the agency. They signed me, and I was there for a while. I would go out on commercial auditions and things of that nature. I got a theatrical agent. I started going out theatrically. And anyway, it took me 3 years to book a commercial because there's so many actors who audition for commercials. I mean, it could be 1,000 or more. And I was so naive that I read for a McDonald's chicken sandwich commercial. It was their very first chicken sandwich. They were just unveiling it to the United States. So it was a national, and it was going to be pretty good money. And anyway, long story short, my agent kept calling saying, well, you have a audition for McDonald's today. And I went, oh, I guess it's another commercial. And so I went on 4 McDonald's commercial auditions, not realizing it was for the same McDonald's commercial. And when I got there for the 5th one, I was sitting in the lobby, and there were like 3 other boys who looked just like me, you know, the all-American counter boy. And I went, oh, this is like it, right? And the casting director came out and said, who wants to go first? And I have no idea why. I just went, I do. And she goes, okay, you come in. And she brought in the older man who was buying the chicken sandwich. And there were 30 people along a giant table. And we basically just kibitzed with all of them. And I made sure I made eye contact with everyone, you know, just like my agent instructed me to. And,
right.
You know, because I really was just naive. I really had no clue. And when we both left, she said, just wait right here. And we did. And then she came back out and she said to the other boys, I'm sorry, you can go home. And I went, oh, I must have gotten it. So anyway,
what a kick.
It was very exciting to, you know, book something. And then I started booking small parts and things like that. But I ultimately realized you're not very good. You know? you're okay.
But you still had an interest in film in that.
I did. But strangely enough, I was working for film companies right outside of high school. I worked for a film company that made teasers and trailers. So I learned all about that. I used to go to all the studios. I would meet with a lot of the big people there. I used to, interestingly enough, when they did Barbra Streisand's Superman album, I would go to Barbra Streisand's house all the time. So I would see Barbra Streisand would answer the door and say, oh, come on in, have a seat here. And then you could hear her singing, you know, throughout the house. And I'm like, wow, how many people get to have this experience?
Oh my gosh.
Right. Yeah. And the same with Bette Midler. When she did Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
That whole thing, that was the company I worked for at the time. So when I left there, I got a job offer to go work on David Lynch's Dune, right?
Yeah.
As a production assistant, and I turned it down. I didn't know what Dune was. I didn't know who David Lynch was.
Oh my gosh.
I had no idea who Dino De Laurentiis was. All I know is I didn't want to be a gopher boy anymore, right? Because that's what I was at this film company. And anyway, this was on a Friday. The offer came in. I got my last paycheck, and back then, you know, your paychecks were like $250 later.
Right.
And I went out and had a good time that weekend. And then when Monday rolled around, I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do for a job? And the woman at Dune called me back and said, are you sure? Really, you could just start tomorrow, or you could start today, whatever you want to do. And I went, okay. like so begrudgingly okay. And I look back on that and I go, my God, if I hadn't taken that movie, my career would never have landed in the place that it did, because what I didn't realize was it was making all of the connections and learning from these greats that helped me get from place to place to place, you know? So when Dune finished, after 4 years of working on Dune and Conan the Destroyer, we made it at the same time.
You're talking about all my favorite movies
Oh,
know?
I love that. I
and,
love that.
and the fact that you're telling me that when you were offered the job on, you know, at least the job on Dune, that you did so reluctantly, and I can't help but think of Yoda, you know, pointing at Luke Skywalker and saying, "Never his mind on where he was, what he was doing."
It's so true, but I mean, I think back and I say, God, you know, you should have really thought of a better decision than that. Thank God destiny or somebody on the other side was bugging that lady. Call him back, you know, and thank God she did, because it really was one of the best times of my life to actually get to interact with them, because, you know, like the first year it was just me, David, Rafaela, a couple of secretaries, and that was it. And then we went into pre-production, and all the people started coming into Universal where we were, and started there, and then the production moved to a Studios Churubusco in Mexico City, and that's where both films were shot simultaneously, right? And anyway, and then, you know, to cap it all off, I got to go to the royal premiere in London, and that was very exciting. And then we had the big party at a place called Blondie's where Duran Duran was there.
Oh my gosh.
Of course, Grace Jones, who I really loved.
Yeah.
And she was in, you know,
Conan the Destroyer.
Yeah. I used to just like cavell up a little bit when she would come into the office, because I loved her music. I just thought she was so unique and so cool, and
uniquely lovely, just a beautiful human being, you know, just she was perfect for that role. She was perfect for that role.
She was, and I think she's an alien because she looks exactly the same. She has not aged one bit. So
well, and one of the there were several avenues that opened up for you, but one was doing your own films. You wanted to produce your own films, and also writing. But you won an award for Stranger at the Pentagon.
Yes.
Yeah.
A few of them, actually, which was really nice. So I decided I worked for two different producers who did Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, right? Of which I was one of the CDs. And then I worked for a producer who produced the Saw movies. I did not work on the Saw movies, but she produced those movies. So both of those films, how they got, I know. It's hard to watch. But that first one, the ending was the best ending I've ever seen. So, you know, where Jigsaw gets up at the end, he's been alive the whole time. But both of those movies started off as a short film, right? And that's how they got sold. So I said, well, I'm going to make a short film. And so I did a little campaign, raised a little bit of money, said, okay. And I'm thinking a small production, just to show investors, that kind of thing. Well, the universe didn't want it that way. It just said, no, bigger, big. I literally, anything I asked for, I received, right? Literally within a day. I said, boy, wouldn't it be great to have a real DP with a red camera? The next day, the actor I hired to play Valiant Thor, Jeff Jocelyn, called me and said, hey, my buddy is a DP and he has a red camera and he'd love to shoot this. I sent him the script. I was like, great. Talked to him. Everything worked out. Got him on board. I brought on other producers I've worked many times with on other productions. They got me all of the locations for free. They got me all kind of sets and things that we needed. Even like one day was a full-blown green screen day where I had over 80 visual effects shots to get done in one day. And so we got every shot except for one, and it was the one that I was okay with losing. So we saved it till the end. But anyway, so then it was sort of like, about less than a year journey to get all those visual effects done. I had to find a small sort of pop and pop. Pop and sun.
Why did you choose that topic?
Well, interestingly enough, I had read Stranger at the Pentagon in the 80s, right? And I just really liked the book. I liked that it was simple. I liked that it was just little vignettes of stories. And the photograph of Valiant Thor, when I looked at it, it just rang true to me.
Okay, now that's what I want to talk about, because I'm confused. Because there is a photograph of a gentleman that a rather handsome gentleman from the 50s, with dark hair that looks sort of like Jimmy Stewart, and he's sort of leaning forward on his knees, and he's looking at some papers, and then there's another picture of another guy that's in a room full of people, and he's got blonde hair, and he sort of looks like Dash Riprock from the Flintstones, and they say he's you know what I'm saying?
Oh my god.
So which one of those guys is Valiant Thor?
Let me clear it up for everybody. Phil Schneider told the story at a convention, and he showed that photograph, and he said that guy looked like it was Valiant Thor. Right. So when I had that, I called Dr. Frank and I said, do you, this man is saying that is Valiant Thor. He said, no, Craig, the man in the photograph, that is Valiant Thor. That is his Vice Commander Dawn. And the woman sitting next to Dawn is Vice Commander Zan's wife. And her name is Jill. And I said, okay. I said, well, where do you think we're getting this confusion from? He said, well, I really don't know. Now, at another time, I met a man. I meet a lot of people, and they say they were with former organizations. I met former Secret Service guys, several ex-CIA people who claim to have been CIA. And one man said to me, who claimed to be ex-CIA, he said, no, that man's name is Captain Gould. Now, here's the interesting thing is Dr. Frank said the very first person that Valiant Thor met when he went to the Pentagon before he went to the Secretary and Undersecretary of Defense was Captain Gould. So I don't know if that's the Captain Gould or where it in lies, but what I would like to find is who all of those people were in that room, so we could actually find out who their names are. Now, there are 4 other people that I have met who met Valiant Thor, right, in person. And the husband and wife team, they're the ones who introduced me to Dr. Frank. They met him in the early 60s upon his return to Earth. And they said that, they were talking with him and Dr. Frank late one night. The gentleman used to have a numerology show in Las Vegas. And as we know, Valiant Thor's ship in the early 60s was actually stationed in Henderson, Nevada. And when they built that up with too many houses, they moved it to Lake Mead, right? So all of his craft are stationed in and around the Earth in 287 locations in these Victor class saucers, right? Which are 300 feet in diameter. Right there. Here. Like
Yeah.
this is, and these are the blueprints right here to the actual craft. There we go. If I lean that way,
And I
you can
guess
see it a little more.
what we're getting to here, Craig, is that clearly uh, the film was based upon a true story with several
It
participants,
is.
with
It is.
many different witnesses who met this individual. And you know, I I hate to deviate, but this really reminds me of the friendship case in Italy. Are you familiar with that?
Which one?
Well, it's actually referring to a series of cases that took place in and around Pescara, Italy, in the late 50s and early 60s. And they were collectively called the friendship cases, and they involved a guy named Victor Bruno. Gosh, I have a book here too. But
Was it the UMO? UMMO?
Oh yeah, well yeah. You're talking about they're one of the species, I guess
Right.
that the friends dealt with. The friends were humanoid. They could
That's
be.
that's the UMO's symbol that they have under their craft.
So and
And
we have photographs of those.
and we have photographs of those craft. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm convinced that these cases are related because the friends are humans essentially,
Yes.
but they live
Yes.
all over the place, not just on Venus, but in underground bases here on Earth that they easily
Yes.
construct with technologies that we're just simply not familiar with. They can build a huge base in a day with the flip of a
Yes.
switch, essentially. You know, but
Yeah.
I don't mean to deviate because we're, you know, but I can kind of hear what you're saying. I'm thinking all of a sudden these cases seem to be related to me. So go on, Craig. I apologize because this is really
no
interesting.
worries.
You know, because we're
Yeah.
talking about a guy that comes and tries to convince us that, you know, we need to take a different path, right?
Well, it really was when he came, it was already predestined that he was coming. Our government knew that. The only thing that I do not know is the span of time that was beforehand. I do know that Dr. Frank said that Valiant Thor told him that it seemed like in an eternity once he was given the mission that it occurred. Right.
Mhm.
So he literally sort of was almost climbing the walls, really wanting to get it started. So he could have been here traveling back and forth from the interior of Venus for, you know, maybe from the 30s, maybe from the 20s. We really don't know. But here's an interesting factoid is if our government had known maybe as early as 1950, when I spoke to Major George Filer, who is our MUFON New Jersey state director.
Yes.
He was a major at the time at the Pentagon of Valiant Thor, and he heard about Valiant Thor. He said, I even walked down a corridor once, and one of the guys, the other officers with him said that he's in there, right? Like my whole body is ringing with chills when I just say that, right?
Wow.
But here's the clincher. He said, Craig, I was on a plane and I sat next to Michael Rennie, who played Klaatu in The Day the Earth Stood Still.
I was just getting to that because I knew that's where that was
Yes.
leading, because that's where that film came from. That was where the idea for the right.
So he said he had, in their conversation, he told Filer that the US government paid to have that film done so that they could gauge the world's reaction to a human extraterrestrial visiting Earth. So it makes me wonder, was that made knowing that Valiant Thor was going to be arriving to gauge the reaction, or was it happenstance? right? But it's interesting because we don't know how long Valiant Thor, how far in advance they knew that he was coming.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like
Right.
there in my mind, especially when it comes to the government. I guess there really is no coincidence. There are no coincidences,
No,
right?
no.
And so your adventures in film and books, don't you think that there is perhaps an effort on the part of, I want to say, the government or the powers that be, I suppose, to work their way into culture, to use films as a way of introducing this topic to the masses? I mean,
Sure.
and that you
Sure.
yourself are a part of that that machine that's bringing these things more or less to light in a
Right.
subtle way. But this stranger at the Pentagon thing, this is based on a true thing with witnesses and
Right.
even people that we know.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I can't say who, but I've talked to a lot of people in high positions who wink at me and say, it's true. It's true. And I mean, I wasn't there. I've never seen the files. I've never seen that. As we know, Harley Bird, Richard E. Bird's nephew, was part of Project Blue Book. He wrote the foreword to Stranger at the Pentagon, and he confirmed the story. I later met family members of the Bird family, and they gave to me Harley's honorable discharge papers, which clearly showed that he worked for the Department of Defense during the years of Valiant Thor's tenure at the Pentagon under intelligence or special intelligence. Right.
Wow.
So, I
Wow.
mean, they're not going to say works on Project Blue Book. They're not going to say that,
Yeah.
anything like that. So it's just, it's fascinating that there's all these little millions of pieces that I've been able to collect over the years. And I did have Dr. Frank's ear. I mean, for years, we would have lunch at least once or twice a week. And I would interview him for hours about the script and all of the stories that he never put into print.
Mm-hmm.
Little simple stories about visiting what craft or what people or conversations that he had with the various vice commanders, crew members, or with Valiant Thor. I mean, there was one thing he told me. He said, Craig, I met Valiant Thor in 1959. I re-met him in 1961, and I never saw the man smile until the 70s. He said his job is extremely important. He said, so I knew intuitively never to ask him my mundane questions that I was to ask the vice commanders because they would answer it for me. But then there was a rare occasion where he would say, ask me anything. And he said, and here's the thing, he would never lie to you. Right?
Right.
No, never would. He would never, like sometimes, we might make a little white lie to not hurt someone. He just tells the truth. So
that is one of the traits of the friends that
right.
they're basically, there's no separation between them, and they have this living thing they call Ureda, which is an actual living being that is fed by goodwill and love.
Mm-hmm.
And so when humans are congregating and loving each other and caring about each other, they're actually feeding a living entity that they call Ureda. I don't know if you ever heard that concept before, but
I have. There's also, the universe has a cosmic heart, and it is based on the same thing. So when people connect to source and they start working from their heart to rule their mind instead of their ego, they start connecting into source, into the heart of the universe and into the mind of the universe. So now you start elevating and your thoughts and your sustenance, your spiritual sustenance, because now you are feeding directly to the live stream. So there's a lot of worlds and things like that. Even in the ET Almanac, there was a race, and I think it was the Itapurians, if I recall, that their planet was dying out. And so what they did was they found another little place in the solar system that had 3 planets. They used one planet as their heart-based planet that only emanated love into the other 2 worlds. They used one planet only for their machinery and making of things, because they found that machinery and things also cause cancer, right? And then they moved all of their wildlife and ocean life and everything over in small increments, until then they started moving the people over in increments until the whole new settlement was. So now they have this trine of a planet of love, which is the same basic principle. I'm getting like major chills again just talking about it.
Well, I am too,
connection.
because I'm getting that feeling too. I'm probably going off on the wrong track here, but I'm hearing it's the Harkonnen and planet Caladan, and that's what I'm envisioning. House Atreides,
yeah, absolutely. So there's so many incredible, just incredible stories, but that one, especially Stranger at the Pentagon, is, I only made the film never to show it, right? So the film is just selected scenes from the original big script, some scenes cut down and things like that. And then I left it with a cliffhanger ending at the end so that investors would want to see more. And it would just give them an idea. We didn't have Marvel visual effects. We had decent visual effects because that's what I could afford. And then the world started begging me to see it. And the Burbank Film Festival wanted to see it. And I said, okay. So I took it over. I showed it to the head guy. And when it was over, he goes, oh, that's a nice sci-fi film. I said, oh, it's not over. Keep watching. And then once he saw Dr. Frank talk about Valiant Thor and you saw the real people, he was just blown. Like, his mind was blown, but he's not into this stuff. So that's what blew his mind. So they made it an official selection, and everyone wanted to see it. So it filled up the theater. All 275 seats came to see Stranger at the Pentagon that night. It was a huge bash. They even put on a midnight showing that was like half full.
Right.
And then there was a big party afterwards. So
cool.
So it was.
That had to have been fun. Exciting. I mean, that had to have been
so fun. It was so fun. So, so again, everyone, if you're going to watch it, you can watch it on Amazon Prime, or you can go to strangeratthepentagon.com and watch it. But just know it's just selected scenes. It's short. It's 27 minutes, and the film is really 20, and then there's a lot of credits because there was 1 million people to thank. And don't call it a trailer. It's not a trailer. It is what it is. So know that going in, to get an idea of what a huge production could be. So.
Oh, great. Well, I have seen snippets from it before, but I'm going to have to rent it now. I really want, I was familiar with the story and have been over the years, but I'd always been a little bit confused over whether Valiant Thor was the dark-haired guy or the blonde-haired Dash Riprock guy. I could never distinguish between the two.
He's the one from those original photos that were taken at Howard Menger's backyard.
Wow. Wow,
right?
that's
In
amazing.
which, and it was taken by a retired Air Force photographer and UFO buff, August C. Roberts, who was friends with Dr. Frank, and Dr. Frank lived in New Jersey at the time. A lot of the extraterrestrial contacts were coming out of New Jersey. Howard Menger was in contact with many, many human races throughout our galaxy, and he had photographic proof of craft and different things of that nature, just like Adamski did. And that, for instance, when Valiant Thor was there, they called them the visitors. And so if a visitor gave Howard a certain handshake, Howard knew they weren't from here. And it was confirmed that Valiant Thor and the group did give him the secret handshake. And this was done through, we learned this through August Roberts' notes, because he was writing a book that never got published. And he talked about this secret handshake and that Howard had confirmed that they were not from here. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, that led to some other things. I mean, you've written a series of books.
Yes.
And the name of the series, I want to make sure that I get this right. You've actually got 4 books in this series, and it's called the Extraterrestrial Saga?
The Autobiography of an Extraterrestrial Saga. So, in a nutshell, it's a book series that is about the universe in conjunction with Earth, how the universe is raising the Earth to get our vibration here to match the rest of the universe, from us rising up and out of duality, going into fully consciousness, and we can actually rejoin universal society and start having space travel again, going and visiting other worlds. We can leave and go work on vessels and do different jobs and things of that nature. That's how the whole universe is set up. But it's primarily done through a Pleiadian man named Turan. That's who the book is about. And Turan is a senior professor at the University of Melchizedek, which is the universe's spiritual university. It's 490 planets that go from one end of a galaxy to another. So they're all in very close proximity. And so he teaches young starseeds who volunteer to leave their fully conscious bodies in suspended animation and have their souls reincarnate on Earth, because since they already have this fully conscious ability, when they are born here and as they grow, they will have a spiritual quickening, and they will start to grow spiritually and raise consciousness on a very quicker timeline than everyone else. And this helps raise everyone else up. So, and he also teaches mighty messengers who come in for more of a global purpose, right? Before they come in, and it's all very detailed in the books about, how this whole process and stuff is done. But the most interesting part of it all is Turan was born dualistic in a fully conscious society. In every 200 births up there, one person is born dualistic. And the reason for it is for the dualistic person to learn from fully conscious people, and especially for the fully conscious people to be more not lenient, but more open, to understand how a dualistic mind works, right?
Yes.
So he is given this task to do it. And throughout the books, we find how he attains full consciousness. So we, as the reader of the book, our Tehran, and we learn how we can obtain full consciousness as well, which is amazing. And then we have the greater duality in the universe that is also the secondary story, and is quite fascinating to learn, which is about Archangel Michael and Lucifer, and that entire story, and the story of when he fell, how long it took, why he did it. We go to the hearings, and then once he is imprisoned for a span of 200,000 years because he's an immortal, Tehran is asked to go and take down his lateral statement, which he has refused in the past, but he accepts Tehran for some reason. And we start to learn all these other things unfold. And then we actually see, we go in book 3 to Lucifer's tribunal, where he's put on trial for soul death.
Wow, that's cool.
I never heard of that concept before. But anyway, I just write what I hear, So it's a pretty.
Let me ask you this, Craig. You say you write what you hear. Is this like an automatic writing thing?
It is. This is automatic writing. This is channeling. When I was 26, I had a major spiritual awakening with universal masters. That's as how I can explain it. They took me from being totally asleep, right, to being awake within a 2-year span of time, where most people would short circuit, right? I trudged through and got there, and then and during that time I just started writing a book about all my experiences and everything on how this process was being done. And at the end of that, the main master teacher said, "What would you say if I told you that you just wrote that book for yourself?" And I said, then I learned a lot about myself. And he said, now it's time to sit down and write the real books you came here to write. I don't want you to stop, edit, or do anything. I want you to write and write. And of course, it was through pen, not typing.
Right.
And write and write and write until you can write no more. And so they started waking me up at 3 a.m. every morning, saying that was the best time to write because all of the brain waves were down. And that's how the process has been ever since. So I've been up since 2:30 this morning, already finishing up my new MUFON book. So
well, that's funny, because when we exchanged emails and I saw that they were coming at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, I was thinking to myself that this is a prompt individual. When you do your interview with him, you had better be ready on the time that you said you were going to do it.
Right.
Of course, then that leads to your latest book, right? I mean, the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac. Tell us about that.
There it is. And weirdly enough, or wonderfully enough, I got the Italian version that just got released in Italy yesterday. Wow. Isn't that cool?
Wow, that's
very shiny cover, as you can see.
Yeah.
Well, it came about, my book agent called me up and said, with your background studying all the UFO cases all over the years, and with your books, the Extraterrestrial Species, I can't get them all right, the Autobiography of an Extraterrestrial Saga books, you're the right man to write this book. And I have the title, the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac. And I went, oh my God, I could totally write that book, right? Because I knew I had studied all of the contactee cases from way back when. My favorite are the early ones, which were all human, primarily, not all of them, but most of them. So he said, do up a proposal and I just know I can sell it. Well, he sold it in 4 days, and I was writing it the following week, and I went, wow, this just doesn't happen. So maybe the universe really wants this book out there in the public, right?
Right.
So what I did is I went to all of the contactee material from books, and I went to either the publishers or the contactees themselves, asked for permission to write about these stories. So if you like reading about the Itapurians or the Clermers or the Clarions, you could go to the back of the book, and under further reading, it will tell you the name of the book, and it will also tell you where you can purchase it, because a lot of the books are out of print, and I found where you can even like some of the books can only be bought now in PDF, but at least you can still buy them, right? If people are really interested in this stuff. So there's for one, and I had to do the book. The publisher wanted it under 300 pages, and I was like, okay, well, how many races can I fit in there? Because I had well over 100 that I had on my original list,
right?
And there's way more, but then you start getting into real obscure ones. But anyway, I was listening to a talk by Paul Hellyer, and he said in one of his latest talks before he passed that he knew of 82 races visiting Earth. I said, I'm going to honor Paul Hellyer. I'm going to pick 82. I'm going to pray they fit. And it took some juggling. I had to take some stuff out of the back of the book that I had to make them fit. And so that's why I chose the 82 races. And the publisher just wanted a thumbnail review of each of the races. And they figured if people really wanted to know more, they could go to the back of the book and they can go to further reading and read more about that. So what I did is I took the really best, cool highlights of each of the races and put them there for inclusion. And then what I did is in the back of the book, all of the enlightened races share their technology. It's all the same. They share everything, and they even share themselves. So you and I think of telepathy as just talking mind to mind, but it goes beyond that. So if you and I were fully telepathic, and I said, Richard, I'm gonna share a story of the time I visited the spot where Victor 1 is in Lake Mead, right?
Right.
I could transfer my feeling body to your feeling body. So as I'm telling you the story, you are feeling every sensation I am. If it's a learning experience, you will feel the growth that I had, and that growth will be added to your growth because now you're an experiencer in it. You see?
Yes.
So that's
Tell me this.
connection
Tell me this, Craig. In some of these species, are there technologies based just simply on love and emotion, like actual technologies that are fed by love?
There are the organic technologies. Those are totally fed on love. Some of them have a brain. Some of them have a brain and a heart. Some of them have a brain, a heart, and organs. It's however they want to set it up, because they can create these things themselves, right?
Right.
Because they can create limbs, they can create all kinds of things. Because remember, these are races that are living for thousands and thousands of years besides the immortals.
Mm-hmm.
So they have ways to correct everything. They don't get illness or anything of that nature, but what they, if there was an accident and something happened, they could replace they can regrow limbs, they could do all different kinds of things like that. So but a lot of it is connecting the heart and the mind to the craft, especially for the created beings who have these very powerful craft, that they're the only ones that can run it, because even their DNA is married into the skin of the ship. So when they connect to the ship, it is only their thoughts, their heart and mind that can run it to jump across the universe, to jump into another universe, to jump into another super universe, to go wherever. They still have to clear passage, right? If they're going to go somewhere. But it's really of them just thinking of the resonant field of where they want to go, and boom, they're there as well. Fully conscious beings can do it. There are craft, like some of the Victor class saucers have that, and they wear a headpiece that has a little diamond here and then goes around, and they connect to the craft that way. So all the vice commanders can fly the craft. Actually, they all do the same job, and sometimes they switch doing the various jobs and duties to eliminate boredom. Right.
Yeah, I want to ask you your opinion about a species, I guess you could call it, that I had heard the other day. It was David Adair was talking about it.
Right.
And he was talking about this, that he actually interacted with a spacecraft / living being that was like 8.5 billion years old, and this thing was it had finger things like this, I guess you could say, or and he said he placed his fingers and automatically knew who he was and all that stuff. But I guess what I'm asking you is, are you aware of a species like that that's almost as old as the universe itself? It almost kind of reminds me of that. You remember that episode from Star Trek: The Next Generation called Tin Man? It was kind of like that. What do you think about that?
Well, I've never heard of that, but believe me, there are so many beings and races. That being could be from another super universe that's here trying to engage with people here to help to lift their consciousness. I mean, David, in his interaction with that being, could have been downloaded with some specific information that will start to come through him over the next few years. I find that with a lot of people who have had interaction with enlightened beings, and they think it's just this one-time thing, but they do get downloaded. And that, I think of like the old contact pills that had all the little tiny, dots inside.
Yeah.
It's like thinking of that, and it's sort of like on a time release where things like that happen. The Alpha Centaurians, interestingly enough, say that they know of 1,019,000 races. But if you go to the Urantia book, it talks about 5,342,482,337,666. That's the number of Earth in the universe. So imagine how much more that there could be out there. I mean, all of us, we're a planet that's just we're in kindergarten trying to raise up into the next graduation of school.
Well, Craig, aren't there though? And let's be clear, aren't there also forces that are trying to prevent that?
Yes, there are forces that are trying to prevent that, because what those forces really want is they want to maintain the resources of planets, territory of planets, usually underground. If they need permission, I mean, that's a whole nother show if we go into what is supposedly have happened on Earth and obtaining permission. And then once you let them in, do you really know how many are coming in? Do you know, does it become an infestation underground of these creatures that are not here to help us, right? They could be neutral, or they could be here to do nefarious harm throughout the futures as well. And if they have cloning or hybridization, that type of thing, that gets into a whole nother realm. I mean, I do go into some of the hybrid species, some that are that are good, that have visited here and that type of thing, that don't look like us. But if you're a tech god and you know exactly how to create life, you can create life through animal and human DNA change. You just have to know the right sequencing, right, to obtain what you're trying to do. And are you trying to create an aggressive race like the Clone Wars, right? Or are you creating a slave race, or are you creating a race? Really, in the big scheme of things, no one is allowed to create a new race unless it's sanctioned through the angelic core, right? But a lot of these negative races do it in secret, and they create races as well. And then we know a lot of races that have cloned and cloned and cloned themselves have lost the ability to ascend. So they're coming back to our chains because our DNA chains are for ascension. And so if they start integrating and they keep creating a different a hybrid, and then the next hybrid, and the next hybrid, and the next hybrid, they start to become more and more human, and then they're able to ascend again, right?
So are we talking about humans from the future?
Well, there could be some humans from the future. I mean, if you look at Bashar, right, Deralanka, who's a very good friend of mine, and we have a new movie out on Amazon called Alienated, by the way. If people want to watch it on Amazon Prime.
That's the one where the guy's standing next to the girl with the antenna, right?
That's it. Yeah. It's just a sweet little movie, that kind of thing. So, and we worked on Bashar First Contact, which was how Daryl first started seeing spacecraft and then the beings, and how he got into this channeling to become one of the top channelers in the world. So for instance, there are seven hybrid races. The hybrid one are small grays. They're known as the Maze. Hybrid 2, or the taller grays, are known as the Mazani. The hybrid 3 are Sasani beings. They're half human, half gray. The Shalail beings are slightly more human looking. The Yayael are beings that are very human-like. That's the hybrid 5. Hybrid 6 are Earth humans becoming the 6th hybrid race, which are called Inakika. And then the 7th race, which has not been done yet, is called Anuhet, which is a blending of all 6 hybrid races in 1,000 years, right? Also, in the ET Almanac, there's a very advanced race called the Solzars. And what they did is they went through the entire universe, and they took the best of the best of the top 33 DNA chains and incorporated it into their DNA. And so they are like these super ultra unbelievable humans. They're very multidimensional, and their next upgrade will be to 44 chains as well.
Can
Right.
can
But
I
of
ask you a
course,
question? This is
yeah,
I've been thinking about this as we've had our conversation. You brought up something a little bit earlier about permission,
right.
permission, and so if a species, a race wants to come here, do they have to seek permission from someone? I keep thinking of that scene in The Day the Earth Stood Still where Kathy Bates says, "Well, why have you come to our planet?" And Keanu Reeves looks at her kind of quizzically and says, "Your planet."
Right, right. Well, how the universe of fully conscious beings looks at it, all planets belong to everyone. We all came from the same primordial atom, therefore we are all one. That's why they share everything, because everything is all, and we are all, and all are one. So every planet belongs to everyone. It doesn't mean like these aggressive races who come and start to take something over, right? Does the hierarchy allow that for a certain type of learning? What are the beings, like for instance here on Earth, what is the purpose of everyone learning here? So that might be allowed for a certain long length of time, but when that length of time is over, it will end, and then all those souls will graduate to the next level of consciousness and move on, the good and the bad, right? Because when everything goes back to the other side, it's all one. We look at everything as being separate, right?
Right.
So,
Right. It's
so
it's weird that you're saying all of this right now, because I don't mean to, when I have my guests on, I never really like to talk about myself.
right.
I just kind of sort of shut my mouth and so forth. But I did recently write a blog, and I have a little blog, and I wrote an article, and basically it was called "Matter from Thought." Panpsychism, biocentrism, and the ghostly cat in the box. And I kind of go through the whole quantum wave function collapse thing, and atoms and observation and all that stuff, and Schrodinger's cat, and then the end at the end of it, the conclusion essentially is that if there was room enough in that tiny space prior to the Big Bang for everything in the universe, then surely there's enough room in our hearts for each other.
Everything. That's right. Absolutely. Everything is based on perception, right?
Right.
When I was totally asleep, I look back and I'm just like, oh yeah, I was the guy. I got up, I went to work, I had dinner with friends, I went out on the weekend. Oh, what are we going to do for fun? And that kind of thing. I was never thinking of my spiritual evolution. I was only going through my reactionary emotions when I got angry at something, when I was happy about something, and
Right.
all of that. And then when I had this big analysis, because they did take me through the master teachers took me through a whole thing about thought. What is thought and how thought actually works, right? And again, they say you keep everything simple. That's how they explained it to me. And they said it's like this: you think a thought, you think on that thought. You have the power to create or destroy that thought. If you create that thought in disharmony, you are responsible for its life until it ends. If you think on that thought and do good for someone else, you will receive beautiful love coming back to you through the expression in which it was given, right? Through the heart. So I was like, God, I never thought of that. So I started like thinking every time I would get mad at something when I was learning this stuff, I would say, okay, how am I going to get through this? So I would meditate, and I would, if it was angry at a person, I would just put them in a bubble, put light around them, and I would send them love. And I go, oh my God, this is so hard. This is so hard. But I just did it over and over and over again. And then I would sort of like do an astral talk and just say, look, I'd really like this to be resolved. We don't have to be good friends. We don't have to be whatever, but at least I want you to be open to talk about it. And when the time is right, the energy will open up for us to have a conversation. And I started doing that, and I realized I didn't need to make everything neat and tidy right away, because that's what my soul wanted. I needed to allow enough time for everyone to heal with whatever happened, for us to come back together so we could talk about it in a more enlightened way. And then if we stayed friends, we stayed friends, or if we parted, we parted, but at least it was amicably. And those feelings were no longer going to be stored in my body to cause disease. I never looked at it that way. So that's what I do. And a lot of us are all reactionary. I still reactionary, but I know I just go, okay, just go calm down, just go sit down, do a quick little meditation, and just allow it to be in that. And, and that's what I do. So
I really identify with that, Craig. I really do.
Yeah.
I think that it's, I've learned to do that over the course of my life, not take things so seriously. And there was a time in my life when I was younger, when I would just take things in and just ruminate on them, and just, it would just eat my guts out. I had ulcers when I was younger. I had peptic and a duodenal ulcer, worrying about things all the time. But what that comes down to, though, I think what we're boiling this all down to is that existence, it really is. We do kind of create it all together. We're a part of this conscious network, but that it's all about love, and the only thing that we can really that we really have to offer any other being is love, or negative feelings, which is really just a sort of a mirror of love, right?
Right. Yeah. It is. And when it mirrors back to you, or if I just have, we all have negative thoughts, right? No matter what. And we have a negative thought. We go, why did that like pop into my head? Because we're dualistic beings, and our minds are sifting through crap that's coming through, if you want to call it, esoteric tunnel of thoughts. Are we just picking up on somebody else's thought that's nearby or whatever? And we have to learn to sort of sift through those thoughts, as we will when we become a telepathic race. Because when you start to become telepathic, all the zillions of thoughts come bombarding into your head, but you learn how to start sifting through them and to turn it off when you don't need to be on that mind internet, at all hours of the day, right? That kind of thing. So one thing I wanted to tell you about this.
Yeah, I was going to say, we want to talk about your book. I want to make sure everybody. I want to talk about one more time to make sure everybody gets a chance to see the cover and all that. So
yes, when I was writing it, I got a phone call from a woman in Canada who she was a genealogist, and she told me she was either my fourth or fifth cousin on my mother's father's side. And so I gave her information, and we were talking, and I said, hey, I have a biological father. I said, my dad adopted me when I was 1, but I've never been able to find him. I said, all I know is his name. And she goes, oh, I can find him. And I had already done my DNA, right, to find out what other nationalities I was through my father's side. Mm-hmm. So she found him and called me and said, he did pass away in 2006. This is where he's buried. And so I went to the cemetery. and visited his crypt. And I went to the front desk and asked them if they had a name of somebody who called when he died. And they said yes. And they gave me the guy's name, different last name than his. And so I looked up the gentleman. Weirdly enough, he lived around the corner from me. At the time, he was a 74-year-old man. Wrote him a letter, said, I'm just trying, I'm trying to find the family of my biological father. And here's a picture of myself. If you know of anybody, please send it to them. 2 days later, I got a call from the guy's son who said, my dad got your letter. Normally, we would think this is weird, but you are like an extreme doppelganger for Fred, right? And I said, oh. And I said, so was your dad friends with him? And he goes, no, it's his brother. It's his half-brother. And I said, oh, so you're my cousin. And he goes, yeah, I guess I am, right? So I go and I have dinner with my new uncle, my new cousin, and my uncle just sat there like this the whole time. Oh my God, I can't believe it. You look just like him. You're the same height. This is just like so great, because I mean, think of it for them,
right,
to have your one and only brother, your one and only sibling die and know that there's nothing left. Right. And then to find out that there really is.
There's a guy and then a guy shows up.
And a guy shows up. And so an hour into our 3-hour dinner, where there was never a lull in the conversation, he said, oh, so, all right. So your dad, he loved airplanes. He loved, all that. He wanted to go in the Air Guard. So my mom had to sign a piece of paper. And so before he was 18, he went in the Air Guard. When he turned 18, they put him in the Air Force. And he said, oh, and he was stationed here and there and there, and he flew airplanes and he did this and that. And he said, oh, and by the way, he worked in Project Blue Book.
Oh, wow.
And I went, what? I was like, I didn't even think he had the concept of what Project Blue Book was. And I said, do you know what that is? And he goes, well, kind of. And then my cousin piped in and said, yeah, me and my brother, man, we tried to get stuff out of him for years. He just wouldn't talk. I said, well, he's really good at keeping secrets, because he kept me a secret from you. And he goes, yeah, he did. So I just thought that was interesting, that here he, was working,
right.
whatever he was doing, remembering that he was in his early 20s when he would have been doing this. So, but what's interesting is, as we know that, Blue Book was a U.S. Air Force study on UFOs that started in 52 and was decommissioned in 1970. And I think they investigated about 11,000 sightings, and the main study was to determine if UFOs were a threat to national security and to scientifically analyze UFO-related data. And here I am writing MUFON books, which is a US-based nonprofit comprised of civilian volunteers who study reported UFO sightings. And I've been into it since I was 26, right? And it doesn't end there. When he left the Air Force and came back here, he became the head of construction for film and TV at Warner Brothers.
Oh my gosh.
So it's like the DNA is just there.
Wow.
It's just there. Yeah,
isn't that amazing wild. That they, and I hear about those same sort of congruities between, twins that were separated at birth, and aside from looking like, they also have very similar food habits and the way they dress and the kind of things they like to watch on TV and all these
That's
sorts
right.
of.
That's right. That's right. So anyway, it was one of the most satisfying things for me to be able to learn about him. I found out that I also had an older sister who had passed, but I also got to learn about his wife. I have a stepbrother and 2 stepsisters who flew out to meet me, and we're like all gaga for UFOs. I thought, oh God, they're either going to love me one way or the other.
Oh my gosh!
Right?
Well, that had to be a happy coincidence, because you have something to talk about,
Yeah,
something in common. Yeah,
completely. They're all just beautiful. So I have my uncle. So I have 3 cousins, an aunt and an uncle, and 3 cousins, 3 god cousins, and. So it was just, and my uncle lives near me, my aunt and uncle, and so I see them for lunch all the time.
Wow. It's good. It's good to have that UFO connection, and good. That's honestly, when I go to the MUFON symposium, that's about the only time that I really get to sit down with people and talk about that thing that I'm really interested in.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. It's so exciting.
Yeah, Craig, I have to tell you, I think we've reached the end of our time.
Yes.
I think we could go on for hours, honestly.
We could.
But before we go, I want you to hold your book up one more time, the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac, and that's on MUFON Books. Yes,
it's on MUFON Books, and if people want autographed copies, they can go to Autobiography of an ET.com and then click on Other Books, and I'll be happy to sign it for you. And I'm actually making it into a documentary right now as well.
Wow. Cool.
And I did start a crowdfunding because the CGI to bring the ETs to life is off the charts. So I think I sent you the link. So if you wouldn't mind posting it in case anyone wants to help us, that would be
not awesome. At all. I'm gonna have that link in the section right below the video, so people can go to the link and they can go to your GoFundMe.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah. And that's how I got Stranger done as well, was, through the help of everyone out there that wanted to see it happen. So. Wow.
Well, Craig, yeah. I really appreciate you being here. I really do. I hope we get a chance to talk again. I hope we get a chance to meet in Denver. I'll see you when we're down there. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. Next July, 8th through 10th.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good having you, Craig.
Thank you. You too.
Okay. Have
a good
day.
Everybody.
Yeah. Bye-bye. I'll be back in just a moment with some afterthoughts.
You are not alone. Thousands of people all over the world have sightings of UFOs per month. MUFON is the place to report them. Since 1969, MUFON has been investigating UFO reports and providing this information to the public. Our aim is the scientific study of UFOs for the benefit of humanity. Support UFO research. Join MUFON today.
You are listening to the official podcast of the Mutual UFO Network.
In addition to his website, autobiographyofan.et.com, be sure to visit Craig's Facebook page, and for those of you watching on YouTube, we've included a link below in the description section for Craig's GoFundMe page where you can help him fund his new documentary project. The universe is a vast and wondrous place. One of the things about our conversation with Craig that brought it home for me was the realization that at the beginning of time, in that tiny speck of proto-matter that preceded the Big Bang, we were all one. And in reality, that has never changed. Thank you again for joining us. If you're watching on YouTube, please be sure to like and subscribe. And we'll see you next time, right here on the official MUFON podcast.